Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Cahill and welcome back to my channel. Today is going to attempt to be a writing vlog. Do I 100% feel like I want to spend a decent amount of chunk of my time writing? No, not really. But as per my prep for NaNoWriMo and finding ways to do writing even if I don't feel like doing writing, we're going to attempt to see if a camera can assist my motivation. It usually does. We're gonna give it a go. I've spent a lot more time recently, rather than just not doing anything, sort of sitting with something open on one screen and then me doing something else on another screen and going back and forth, sort of maybe rereading something or typing something down or sort of thinking about, I don't know, possible scenes or character moments and things like that in a variety of projects, mostly my YA ones. So it's not really writing, but it's still sort of working some way towards, you know, getting stuff done, even if it is ending up only writing like 2 sentences or sticking another few images on relevant projects' Pinterest boards. But I've also gone into the habit of working on bunny ears until I no longer want to work on that project and then moving to a different project. It takes surprisingly little for me to move from one project to the other, which doesn't bode well for November, where I need to write 1,667 words per day on a single project. But this is a start. It's a start at least, and yeah, we just got to work through not wanting to do the work and hope something comes from it. So today we are going to be working on Beneath the Hawthorn Lies, which is my YA urban fantasy fairy project that I wrote in April, I think, in 2020. Basically, it was my fast drafting to the extreme challenge that I had chosen to do for myself that year, where I wrote or pantsed 70k in 7 days. I'll stick it up there in a corner if anybody is interested. I went into this week of Camp NaNoWriMo with a 1-sentence sort of plot in my head, which was a fairy finds out that she's really a human and escapes to the human world in order to find her fairy counterpart. I outlined how my week was going to go, writing about 10,000 words per day, and what part of the story or what beats I would have to cover on each day in order to write the entire thing in the week. It was manic, it was fun, and this is that story. And this draft that I'm doing now is my 3rd draft. So last night I spent quite a while, actually, which I'm very happy about, re-plotting the story using the beta notes that I have for it and my own personal notes that I had for it in what I think needs to change and how to up the tension and the stakes and the motivation and the not so much the character arcs. The character arcs have always been solid in the story. How to up the stakes of the plot. I have I've written very brief notes. Not even notes, really. They're just titles. If you know what, hang on. Basically everything is just this is what happens in this scene, and it's Kinley crossing the roof, or Kinley sneaks out, or the next morning. It's like that, given to the fact what I'm going to do is have my new draft on this left side here, and then this side is going to be draft 2, and then I will word for word copy these specific scenes from this original draft. So I'm rewriting the entire thing, and I will change things I need to change as I'm writing them. And then there are certain scenes I'll get to, scene 5 and 6 for example, which are new scenes, you know, to up the stakes and foreshadowing, things like that, which I'll then have to write. Beneath the Hawthorn Lies is one of my favourite stories that I've ever sort of had the concept for. I wanted to write a fairy story, but all of the fairy stories that pop into my head when I think of YA fairy is always about a human who then finds out she's really a fairy, or human fairy romance which I don't care about. So I wanted to try and do something different with this story, and I was just like, well, what if instead of a human finding out she's a fairy finds out that she is human? She's a changeling who was kidnapped from her human home and bought and raised to be a fairy. The original story was that Kinley, who is the main character, finds out that she is a human and decides that instead of fulfilling her duties to the Queen, which is a life of prestige and tradition and scheduling, which she hates so much, she wants to go and find her fairy counterpart to sort of see what her life would have been like if she had actually grown up as a human, sort of thing. That's changed because I realised writing the first and second draft, so the 2 revisions I've done, that motivation doesn't quite make sense, and it's a very difficult motivation to write about, because how does one go about finding a missing person from anywhere in Ireland, which is the place where this story is set? Everyone has fun Irish names that I forget how to pronounce half the time. It's really terrible, but I do adore them all. And then there's always been this sort of like back subplot of the Queen trying to get Kinley back to where they live in order to fulfill her duties by any means necessary, which wasn't as stake-filled and tension-filled as I wanted it to be. So I've had to readjust how the story is going and how things happen, and basically we've gone down the route now of a mad fairy queen. And so now Kinley's motivation is not to find her fairy counterpart, it is to stop the Queen. I really like how that has changed the story. I really like how that has changed Kinley's motivation and the things that she needs to do. And I'm really liking how it has changed the stakes in the story as well. I'm happy with how I have outlined the story, and I'm happy with the path everything takes. It has a natural progression now that I've changed everything. I've been struggling with the outlines for Assassayowit and They Lead the Hunt, which is my YA witchy novel, and at the moment entitled Bird Whistle House, which is my new sort of paranormal fantasy novel. I'm struggling with their plots. This one I found easy, so that sort of inspired me now, the ease of it, to start working on it again. We'll see how long that lasts. Hopefully quite a while. But today we are going to start the rewrites for Beneath the Hawthorn Lies and see where we get with it. Will that spark something? I don't know. My brain just went, you're rambling way too much, and then I decided, you know what, I don't want to film a writing vlog anymore. And then 1 minute later I'm like, you know what, no, actually I do want to film a writing vlog, I just need to not talk so much. So that's what that I wrote 934 words. Yay! I say that like I just haven't copied everything word for word. The prologue has always been my favourite part of the story. I like how it starts. People are going to say, oh, well, you don't need a prologue in your story. If it's something that can be told in a story, you know, that people don't need to know stuff that happened before the story starts. But this is a little bit of foreshadowing that has nothing to do with the actual plot itself. It's there to set the tone, set the atmosphere regarding location, regarding the fairies in general and how they operate. And obviously there's a little bit of foreshadowing and character backstory and gives stuff away. There's plot elements or things that will happen in the plot that this relates to, so that's why it's there. It's no one's ever said anything about it not being needed, and I changed it from prologue to chapter 0 to stop it being called a prologue, to stop people associating it with such as one. Still do enjoy it. I like how it's written. I like the atmosphere of it. My plan for the future is to have the final chapter mimic this first chapter in tone and style, to sort of like an opening and closing narration sort of feel to it, you know, like it's natural story. I don't know if that's like the feel it gives off at all, to be fair, but that's the plan. I've spoken now for too long and my second Pomodoro has started, so I'm going to get back to work and we are going to start by writing the official first chapter, which again I don't think needs much change to it. See how interesting, oh no, how interested I am in doing that, considering I am still talking to you guys instead of doing some writing. Let's go. Do you like my very appropriate mug for today? I feel like Ross in that one episode of Friends. I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. We're all fine. Second Pomodoro is up. That went faster than I thought it did, actually. I only managed to rewrite about 589 words and I didn't rewrite much of it. Like, I copied most of it, to be fair. I realised that I needed to get my beta feedback up. My beta feedback meaning my line by line document critique that my good friend Day did for me a very while ago, year and a half ago. That's when I planned to first start revising this novel, because as much as her notes and my personal notes help me, I realised that there are things within what I've currently written that I am not going to change, that need, plot wise, that need altering slightly to make things make more sense, etc, etc. So that is now up on my other side as well. We have one more Pomodoro to do after this, in which hopefully I'll finish. Oh, that is the end of the scene. Oh, okay, that is the end of the scene. Then I just finished writing, so I'm going to be moving on to the next scene, which, if I've readjusted how my scenes go, which I think I have, yes, I can keep this second scene in with this one scene. This is where it's going to get complicated. This is why I don't like doing scene by scene sometimes, because I want to have to stick this all into a single chapter at some point of my life, and that's not going to be good. I'll figure it out as I continue writing and listening to my music, which is in fact my Project Witch soundtrack, and not the actual Beneath the Hawthorn Lies soundtrack, because I don't have a soundtrack for Beneath the Hawthorn Lies yet. My next sprint has started, and I did my last one. I started it in the end at 16 minutes because I went to get myself a fine cup of tea, and I'm going to keep talking until this one ends, which I shouldn't do. I must always finish the sentence that I'm currently writing when I'm doing sprints, otherwise I don't like it. We did good, we did okay. That is the end of all 3 of the sprints. Technically now it is my long break time, which I've only set for 15 minutes for some reason, but I'm just gonna click that and be done with it. Woo! We did the first scene. To be fair, scene 1 and scene 2 are basically the same scene because they take place at the same time in the same place. I've just separated them into 2 scenes because they're 2 different points of the scene. Like the first one is more about Kinley and her motivation and sort of her want and need, and then the next is more, or the next part of the scene is more set up for her character and for the world building and for any other tertiary characters that happen to be here. So I separated those into 2 different scenes, even though they are the same scene, or at least they're going to be part of the same chapter. I need to get into now how I'm going to go through the rest of this scene, in which we see sort of her training as one of the most important fairies within the fairy world, which is known as Under Earth, and then to the surprise visit from the Queen, which happens in the next scene. And what I'm going to have to do is read through Act 1 and how I've currently got that set up, and decide whether or not it's fine with how it's set up or whether it needs to change how it's set up. And I think I'll read through it in my beta version that I have up, so I can see if there are any inline comments from Day in regards to how that sort of flows together, and if there's any information that it doesn't need or that we need to get rid of, or something else that we need to include, before I make the decision of how to redo it in the new version, draft 3. Is that the best way to do the thing, to sort of outline and plan what I'm going to do as I do it, as opposed to all ahead of time? Probably not, but I know that if I try and do it ahead of time and get it all planned out first, that is sort of going to get rid of my motivation to want to do the work, because in my head I would have already done the work because I've figured all of this stuff out and I get bored doing it. So we'll do it bit by bit. As I get to the next set of events, I'll decide how to get from A to B to C, rather than doing it all ahead of time. Makes me feel like I've got less work to do because I'm doing it little bit by little bit rather than all at once, which also helps my mindset. I feel okay, actually. I don't feel too bad. Still feel a little bit tired, but that's nothing to do with the writing. I've just been feeling tired and headachy all day. I do feel like I want to do some more, which is not a bad thing, but it's now time for children, so I can't do that right now. Maybe later this evening I'll feel, or I'll continue to feel inclined to do some more work in regards to it. Maybe get through this next scene at least. We'll find out a little bit later. I'll stop now, and then I might have stopped for the rest of the day. We won't know until we get to it later. So later, at the moment, it is.